Hello and welcome to the LTE plant. We are going to run through a safety induction. It will be valid for the calendar year. The zero accidents culture is for us the fact that the safety of people is considered to be a more important value than the mission to which they are assigned. The fact that risk situations should not be ignored and that in no case is risky behavior tolerated by managers or employees. And the fact that each immediate superior is concerned with organizing his team's work by controlling the safety risks and that the employees are always careful not to injure themselves when carrying out their work. The purpose of this safety induction is to inform you of the main risks and the rules and recommendations applied on this site. At the end of this presentation, you will take a test before we issue you with a safety badge, valid for the current year. Once in possession of this pass, we expect you to adopt a positive attitude, adhere to the zero accidents culture, respect the rules and recommendations presented today, think before you act, and analyze an operation's risks before starting work. If you behave dangerously, we reserve the right to exclude you from the site, either temporarily or on a permanent basis. Before starting, remember that a successful operation is an operation without accidents. With the aim of developing a safety culture and changing behaviors on the ground, everyone is asked to respect the plant's 12 shared commitments. At all times at the plant, I will never rush. I will always take the time to think. I will always, where it is required, wear my goggles, my helmet, my safety shoes, and my high-visibility clothing, and I will adapt my PPE whenever necessary. When I use a tool, I think, do I have a more suitable tool for my needs? I respect the basic rules on movements. I will use the handrail whenever possible. I will not make telephone calls in moving vehicles, on a bicycle, or when walking. I will pay attention to my environment, state of the floor, various obstacles, etc. I will focus on what I am doing. I will accept all constructive criticism. I will speak up and repeat myself if necessary, without consideration of seniority. I will read and comply with all of the signs in the plant. I will put them back in place whenever possible, and I will point out any inconsistencies. I will comply with the 3 points of support rule for heavy equipment and ladders. Before carrying out any unusual operations, I will carry out a risk analysis for myself and on all operations that present a risk to be controlled. I will never start work without an RAS validated on the ground by the person in charge of the operational team. I will comply with the marking rules for my worksite and others, a properly marked out area and a sign describing the operation and the risk identified if the worksite is not monitored. Whenever handling equipment, I will keep clear of any unprotected moving parts, particularly during the lifting operations, and I will inform a charge hand. I will always keep the worksite tidy, clean, and make sure it presents no risks to others. Any subcontracted activity is subject to a risk assessment via the prevention plan, which may be one-off or annual, and the risk analysis sheets valid for each operation. This assessment is made after a prior inspection in which representatives from Lafarge and the outside companies involved take part. The purpose of this assessment is to formalize the general measures applicable by all outside companies and the measures specific to each company according to the nature of its intervention. Any changes made during the operation will require an update with your LC coordinator. Do not forget you are responsible for the risks that you generate. When working on a site, you must wear the appropriate personal protective equipment for the operation that you are going to carry out. The following personal protective equipment are compulsory at all times: a helmet, on which the safety badge for the current year must be displayed, goggles, safety boots, suitable gloves for the operation that you have to carry out, high-visibility work overalls, and lastly, ear defenders. Caution: people who wear glasses must wear suitable goggles over their glasses or safety glasses. Depending on the risk analysis, the type of operation, and the location in which the operation is taking place, the basic personal protective equipment should be supplemented with the appropriate equipment, particularly for work where there is an exposure to the risk of splashing and sparks, during which the wearing of goggles is compulsory. During an operation, communication between the different people involved is a key element of your safety. If I am the site manager, I have read the prevention plan and the risk analysis and have passed on the information contained in these documents to the operatives. I have defined and passed on the operating procedures. I have scheduled the safety induction for the operatives. I have made the safety documents available on the worksite. I have made sure that the risk analysis is complied with. If I am an operative, I must have attended the safety induction, Before starting work, your immediate superior must have informed you of the risks on the work site and the operating procedures. I know the operating procedures. I know the worksite access points and emergency exits and the emergency number 5043. I will comply with the risk analysis sheet and my instructions. Movements are one of the main causes of accidents at the cement works. Movements within a plant, although seemingly unremarkable, bear the risk of accidents that can be avoided by applying simple rules. I do not run. I will use the handrail and stairways both when going up and coming down, and also in my movements whenever possible. I will move carefully, paying particular attention to any holes, operations, obstacles, or ruts which may lie along my route. I will adapt the way I walk according to the conditions, particularly on days where there is ice or rain. I use the pedestrian walkways if there are any. I will not enter a marked-off area without permission from the worksite manager. I keep clear of vehicles and heavy equipment, or I signal to the driver before entering the area in which he is working. I do not walk behind moving vehicles. I do not walk in the middle of the road. I wear gloves when moving, and I do not put any sharp objects in my pockets. Lastly, I wear high-visibility clothing. When traveling in a vehicle, I drive attentively, and I respect the road signs in the plant. The wearing of seatbelts is compulsory in all vehicles at all times, even for short trips. Speed is limited to 30 km per hour in the plant, and vehicles must be parked in reverse gear. Private cars are not allowed on work sites. Using mobile phones while driving is prohibited throughout the plant. Lastly, a valid driving license is compulsory, as well as an operator's permit and a CACS, depending on the vehicle used. Before starting work, facilities concerned must be made secure to prevent an unintended startup or the release of an energy source while you are working. This lockout-tagout operation is performed by the Lafarge lockout manager using a padlock. Any operation on equipment or in close proximity must be the subject of a lockout-tagout. As an operative or manager, you must remember that an operation requires at least one padlock to be put on a device or on the lockout-tagout blocks. Once you have finished your work, and with the agreement of the Lafarge correspondent, you must remove the lockout-tagout. All the equipment and information relating to the lockout-tagout is entered into the lockout-tagout form, a copy of which must be displayed at the worksite. Your padlock must be personal, registered, and have a single key. There must be at least 3 padlocks available per person. Non-compliance with the Lafarge lockout-tagout standard exposes you to a major risk of a serious and potentially fatal accident, and may lead to your exclusion from the site. For your safety, comply with this procedure. Working on machines that are running is not allowed unless the operation is the subject of a procedure or an operating procedure written and validated by the Lafarge coordinator. Lockout-tagout rules also apply during trial periods. When you are working, you have to manage every aspect of your worksite in terms of marking out tidiness and cleanliness. Your worksite must be physically marked out. Within this work area, you are the only one who can authorize access of other outside or Lafarge operatives to your worksite. Marking it must be adapted according to the progress of your worksite and according to the risks present in order to ensure minimum disruption and good access. Worksites must be kept tidy at all times, which means that access ways must be clear and free of any obstacles. Hazards must be indicated, gas cylinders must be attached, electric cables and air ducts must be positioned so as not to cause trips and falls. Air ducts must be fitted with anti-whipping lines. Waste must be disposed of as and when it is made. In the event of pollution resulting from a leak or product backflow, immediately inform the Lafarge correspondent and take immediate steps to limit the impacts of the pollution. Working at height is one of the main causes of fatal accidents within the Lafarge Group. In order to reduce exposure to risks of falling from height, the group has implemented a standard which defines the rules to be applied when working at height. At Lafarge, any work carried out at a height of above 1 meter is considered as working at height and must be approached as follows. Firstly, you must define operating procedures that can be carried out at ground level if possible, so as to eliminate the risk. If this is not possible, you must use fall safeguards either by installing collective protection, such as gangways or railings, or use temporary work platforms such as aerial work platforms, scaffolding, or platform step ladders on wheels to prevent falls. Lastly, if it isn't possible to install this equipment, then the use of harness personal protective equipment is authorized. Any use of a harness will be subject to a permit written and signed by the users and direct managers. Personnel using fall safeguards or PPE must be trained, certified, and authorized. You are responsible for checking your own equipment and PPE. The scaffolding must be assembled by operatives certified to perform this type of operation. Once the scaffolding is assembled, it must be approved by a certified person or organization who will give authorization for it to be used. If the wording "Access Authorized" is not posted, access is prohibited. It is strictly prohibited to make any changes to the scaffolding, even temporarily. If necessary, changes must be made by certified scaffolders and the altered scaffolding must be approved again. The condition of the scaffolding must be checked and formalized every day in writing to guarantee the condition of the scaffolding. The ladder is only a means of access. Working on a ladder is only authorized as a last resort after validation of the false safeguards by the Lafarge correspondent. To use a work platform, you must have a GECAS and an operator's permit, the equipment certificate of conformity, and knowledge of the user instructions. When using telescopic work platforms, the operator on the work platform must wear a harness and a permanently fastened short tether to prevent falling from the basket. A supervisor who knows the emergency maneuvers will be positioned at the foot of the work platform to intervene in the event of a problem. It is strictly forbidden to access a work site using the work platform, to climb onto the railings or leave the basket, to use a work platform as a crane to lift loads. The use of Lafarge PSWs must be authorized. Whenever a harness or work platform is used, permit for working at height must be drawn up and validated by your superior and submitted to the Lafarge correspondent. Operatives must be trained by an approved body and equipment must be inspected and checked before use. In order to use fall safeguards or PPE, you must have received clearance and authorization. As the consequences of falling are always serious, no deviation from the standard for working at height will be tolerated. Lifting is one of the most common operations on our sites and must be carried out with care and professionalism. When using equipment like a crane or a hoist for lifting, you must adhere to the following rules. Before any operation, estimate the load to be lifted. Check the load capacity of the lifting equipment, crane, hoists, straps, shackles, etc. Respect the slinging rules and in particular the maximum authorized angles. Designate a charge hand and make sure that he knows the hand signals. Mark out the lifting zone and mark it as no entry. In all cases, it is strictly prohibited to walk under a load. For lifting operations, use a means of guiding from a distance, for example ropes. Manual lifting is to be avoided as far as possible in favor of mechanical lifting equipment to protect operatives' health. If the use of lifting equipment is not possible, movements and postures when lifting must be systematic. Estimate the load, remove any obstacles from your route, bend your knees, carry the load close to your body, avoid repetitive movements, avoid prolonged uncomfortable postures, and in all cases you must wear personal protective equipment, and in particular gloves and safety shoes. The use of grinding, drilling, and angle grinding hand tools and sledgehammers or welding equipment is very common in cement works operations. For all operations, the wearing of suitable personal protective equipment and checking the condition of all of the equipment before and after use is compulsory. In all cases, think before you act and position your body away from the trajectory of the tool or sparks generated by the tool. This simple precaution should avoid half of all accidents leading to time off work caused by this type of tool. It is compulsory for goggles, gloves, and clothing that protects the body from burns to be worn when carrying out grinding, drilling, or angle cutting operations. In all cases, the original safety systems must be present on the machine and, in particular, the handle, which means the tool can be held with both hands. It is forbidden to use an angle grinder for cutting. Welding operations must be carried out wearing welding goggles or a welding mask, clothing that protects the body from burns, such as a leather apron and gloves suitable for hot work. You are responsible for putting up protective screens or tarpaulins if needed to protect people working in or passing nearby the worksite from metal runout, sparks, or welder's flash. If you have to use a torch, make sure you wear the right goggles. These must be tinted. Fasten your cylinders vertically and use pipes that are in good condition, fitted with non-return valves. All operations that generate heat must be carried out with an extinguisher nearby. The use of cutting tools such as cutters or knives should be limited. It is better to use equipment fitted with retractable blades. This type of work must be carried out wearing anti-cut gloves and with the body positioned away from the tool's path. The use of impact tools such as sledgehammers, hammers, impact wrenches, chisels, and other metal objects made from hard steel may produce metal splinters, the movement of which is unpredictable and they may pierce normal work clothes. You therefore have to use suitable protection, such as a leather apron, visor, and leather gloves to protect the vital areas of the body. Checking the tools used beforehand and removing those people who are not directly involved in the operation will reduce the risk of accidents. Dismantling operations must be carried out with care to prevent accidents. Before starting dismantling, you must carry out a risk analysis and define an operating procedure specifying the details of the operations and the equipment used. The main risk is not controlling residual energy, such as weight, pressure, releasing restraints, or electricity, which may surprise the operative during the dismantling. As with the other operations, the worksite must be maintained clean and tidy, materials must be disposed of as they are removed, the collective protection concern must be replaced or modified appropriately, and the circulation areas must be repaired by filling in holes, replacing railings, etc. Several operations may be carried out at the same time in a restricted space. The associated risks are identified in the risk analysis sheet, but you must be vigilant and control the risks engendered by your operation for those who are next to you, and also those above and below you. To do this, communicate with your Lafarge correspondent and the other operatives. Mark out your activity zone, remove unwanted marking, respect markings that are in place, and indicate any interferences in the risk analysis sheet. Working one above the other is not allowed. When one of the jobs is completed, others may continue. The markings are to be replaced at the end of each job or the end of the day. Throughout the operation, the proper management of your worksite will be checked by your Lafarge correspondent, audits, and safety inspections. Any discrepancies found must be corrected and may result in worksite shutdowns. In the event of serious or repeated failings, we reserve the right to exclude you from the site. Compliance with the safety rules is a condition for employment at Lafarge. The following information is given for general guidance only. For detailed information, please refer to French labor laws. You have to comply with labor laws, in particular the following thresholds for working hours. The working day may not exceed 10 hours. The turnaround period must be a minimum of 11 hours. The working week may not exceed 48 hours. The weekly break must be a minimum of 35 hours. If you find a new risk not mentioned on the risk analysis sheet, you must stop what you are doing and inform your superior and the Lafarge correspondent to update the risk analysis. Once the work is completed, your Lafarge correspondent checks work carried out with you and confirms the job completion. To complete the operation, you have to hand over the facilities, remove the lockout-tagout from the worksite, and tidy it. Before removing the lockout-tagout, you have to hand over the facility by replacing the safety systems, such as railings and protective covers, and clear the operations area of all materials so testing and startup can be performed. Then, with the agreement of the Lafarge correspondent, you may remove the lockout-tagout from the facilities by removing all the padlocks. Lastly, before leaving the worksite area, you have to return the equipment borrowed from Lafarge, remove your tools and equipment, and dispose of your waste. Inform the Lafarge manager of your departure. We will now go over the main risks specific to our line of business, so please pay attention. The quarry has its own specific risks linked to its operation, such as the firing of explosives and movements. Before accessing the quarry facilities, check with the Lafarge correspondent the safest route and keep clear of the heavy equipment. In order to limit the risks related to movements, do not approach any heavy equipment on foot or in a vehicle without signaling your presence to the driver. Do not pass in front of moving heavy equipment. Respect the speed limits. Do not pass behind heavy equipment and be careful not to stand in a blind spot. Any access is subject to a request made to the quarry manager or the crushing control room. At certain times, access to the quarry will be prohibited on days when explosive charges are fired. This ban is indicated by the switching on of an illuminated sign at the bottom of the quarry slope. The firing of explosives is preceded by a warning siren. You must take shelter in a building when charges are fired. Concretions are accumulations of material stuck to the walls or ceilings of the facilities, and they are found potentially everywhere in the equipment and also on building structures. They are most often found in the burning line. In all cases, it is strictly forbidden to pass or work under a concretion. Concretions must be cleaned off first. Weekly operations to clean the concretions inside the equipment are carried out by teams specially trained in the use of high-pressure water lances. During these operations, the risk of spraying of hot materials is very high. These operations are indicated by no entry signs in the tower, which strictly forbid access to the area. The This cleaning can also be carried out using compressed air cannons. Along the length of the burning lines, sound signals will warn you that the cannons are being turned on. You are asked to move away from the equipment. The plant has several combustible workshops, which are subject to the EXAT explosive atmosphere regulations, such as the coke, G2000 and DSB workshops, propane tanks, ammonium hydroxide, and wood. The risks will be defined by the risk analysis sheet drawn up with the Lafarge correspondent for all the combustible workshops. Consult the risk analysis sheet before starting work to identify the risks, install protective measures, and define the necessary personal protective equipment. You will be asked for an operating procedure for all hot work, and a hot work permit must be drawn up. Smoking and making telephone calls are of course banned in these workshops. The specific risks are fire, explosion, and work on equipment using chemical products. Chemical products. There are many chemical products present on the site. You have to know the meanings of the signs, their associated risks, and take preventive measures, in particular in terms of PPE. Prior to using a chemical product, you have to consult the safety data sheet for the product and the risk analysis sheet. These documents will warn you of all the risks relating to the product, in particular the protective measures to implement, and also the presence of a carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction (CMR) risk. You are prohibited from being exposed to a CMR product if you have not had a thorough medical checkup, for instance in case of exposure to asbestos or G2000. There are many piles of material in the cement works environment. Working on stocks of material or in a silo or hopper is extremely dangerous and special measures need to be taken. It is prohibited to work alone, climb on foot, pass by, or work within 10 meters of a pile of material. It is prohibited to enter a silo or hopper without permission. The risks specific to these piles of material are collapse, burial, and falls. Accessing these piles of material by heavy machinery or from the top for hoppers limits the risks. Ionization sources are used in the quarry. The zones are marked by a special sign and access is prohibited, even for a few minutes. These sources are put inside equipment. This equipment, for example the quarry stack, can only be accessed after the drawing up of an access authorization signed by the operator and the person responsible for radiation protection, who will be responsible for the lockout-tagout of the source and measuring the radiation around the source. Conveyors are very dangerous and have injured or killed several people on our sites. In order to prevent these accidents, Lafarge has listed 10 rules to respect when working on a or immediately next to a conveyor. Working close to a running conveyor will only be authorized if all the safety systems are in place, if the task allows for keeping a safe distance between the conveyor and the operatives, meaning their clothing, tools, hair, and all parts of their bodies are at a safe distance from the conveyor. The facilities must be the subject of a lockout-tagout procedure before work starts. Operatives must not modify, improperly use, or remove the control, locking, or signaling equipment. It is prohibited to climb, sit, run, stand, touch, or walk on or under the exposed parts of conveyors. Operatives must be trained and prepared on how to use and service the conveyors. You have to make sure that nobody is near the conveyors when starting them up, and you have to warn of any dangerous condition or behavior. Working in a confined space requires a permit to enter, validated by the operator. The configuration of this type of operation requires the presence of a person outside who will continuously monitor the job. Caution: all of our facilities are started up automatically and remotely. Special care should be taken in particular if the enclosed workspace is metallic. Very low voltage tools or isolating transformers must be used. Access to and operations in electrical substations are restricted to qualified personnel. You have to be certified by your management and provide the plant's safety and electrical departments with all your certificates and qualifications. If you do not have electrical qualifications, you can still access the electrified areas, but only if you are accompanied by a person qualified and working in this working environment. Tankers and mixer lorries may reverse during the unloading. It is prohibited to pass by or work close to an unloading mixer, lorry, or tanker. Crossing a marked-out zone is a serious misconduct. Wearing ear defenders is compulsory in the plant because of the ambient noise and the type of operations which generate a noise level of above 85 decibels. Grinding, welding, cutting, heavy impacts, working next to machinery or a compressor are all common operations at the cement works, for which the noise level is over the authorized limit. Remember, if you have to raise your voice to be heard, then the noise level is above 85 decibels. To operate load handling equipment, you need to have a driver's license, an operator's permit, and a CACS. The wearing of seatbelts in heavy vehicles is compulsory. When the worksite starts up, make sure that you have given your works correspondent all your qualifications and operator's permits. These documents will authorize you to operate heavy equipment. Raw mix, clinker, cement, and also the exhaust gas grinding operations, welding, and more generally cement works operations generate dust, which may have an impact on your health. The kind of dust that is most dangerous to your health is not visible, dust particles of a diameter of less than 10 microns. The requirement to wear an FFP2 or FFP3 mask will be stipulated in the risk analysis sheet, but we encourage you to get into the habit of putting on a mask automatically. If there's an accident, keep calm, protect the victim by cutting the energy sources, electricity, gas, etc. Examine and quickly check the condition of the victim or the seriousness of the accident to be able to give an accurate description. Alert the control room on 5043 or the emergency services if the control room cannot be contacted. Give first aid to the victim if you are trained to do so, by carrying out the appropriate emergency procedures for the victim or accident. The emergency numbers are for the control room on 5043 or 0475 49 5043. We recommend that you store this number in your mobile phone. The Lafarge correspondent must be informed immediately of any accidents. If there is an accident, the victim may not leave the site alone without the medical staff's permission and without informing his superior or Lafarge. All accidental events, even if minor, must be entered into the treatment logs provided. Some circumstances may require us to evacuate the facilities. In case of evacuation, remain calm, leave calmly, assemble at the nearest point, count those present, and await instructions. An evacuation siren will be sounded if this type of event occurs. An order to evacuate will be given. It is important that every operative be present at the assembly point in order to know the number present at the plant. Site access is regulated. The site can only be accessed once an attendance sheet available from the plant's reception has been completed. Private vehicles are not allowed outside the visitor and company car park. Lafarge provides sanitation blocks. Please respect these facilities and keep them clean. During production shutdowns, your company can request the installation of one or more portable buildings in the activity zone. The safety badge that we give you is valid for the current year. It must be attached to your helmet. The Lafarge cement sites have ISO 14001 environmental certification. Our environmental policy is to minimize emissions of dust and gas discharges, to save natural resources, to blend in with the environment as much as possible, to prevent and organize the management of accident situations. We expect subcontractors working at the plant to adhere to this policy, particularly in terms of sorting waste. You are responsible for disposing of your waste. In the event of non-compliance, Lafarge Cements reserves the right to shut down your worksite. The main examples of working in the enclosed spaces of the north and/or south cooling tower are work on the pumps, sensors and valves on the cooling circuit, work on the tower's cooling fan, cleaning and disinfecting the tower and tanks, servicing the chemical treatment facility on the cooling circuit. Respect the safety instructions in the Legionella-specific risk analysis to be drawn up before work starts. For all operations on the cooling tower, operatives must be trained in the Legionella risk. PPE is compulsory for any access via the door to the exchangers. FFP3 breathing mask. In the event of chemical products being sprayed, the closest emergency shower and eye bath are in the chemical treatment room, photo below. The PPE that must be worn whenever working in contact with water from the cooling circuit or water treatment products are goggles, an FFP3 mask, and chemical-resistant gloves. Addictions. Alcohol, drugs, and their dangers. Working after having consumed alcohol and/or drugs may result in lower productivity, lower quality of work, but above all, be the cause of accidents. It is prohibited to bring alcoholic drinks into Lafarge Cements establishments. Alcohol or drugs plus work risks your safety and the safety of people around. As a reminder, between 0.3 and 0.5 grams per liter in the blood, feelings of euphoria start. A driver will take risks that you would not normally take, and has a slightly impaired vision. Estimating distances wrongly and peripheral vision is less clear. Between 0.5 and 0.8 grams per liter in the blood, there's a slowing of reaction times, and there are problems with lateral vision. The driver finds it hard to distinguish the signs in users who are about to cross or who come from side roads. With more than 0.8 grams per liter in the blood, the driver will have difficulties making decisions and adapting his driving to the circumstances. The coordination and synchronization of movements are no longer completely under control. We will now test your knowledge. The Lafarge employees of the LTE plant thank you for your attention.